Hello and welcome back. In this session, we're going to talk about note taking. I know in the previous session, I mentioned that we would start with how to prepare to study and then move on to techniques. We will be doing that, but I thought it would be more beneficial to show you how I take notes so that you can try it and put it into practice and see if it works for you. So let's get started. First of all, let's actually talk about what note taking is. Over the years, I have seen people take notes in a wide variety of ways, whether that's in meetings, watching YouTube videos, or studying for certifications. And there are a couple of techniques that I have seen and implemented that have made a huge difference to the effectiveness of my notes. But first, let's talk about what note taking is not. It's not just copying what we see or writing down the exact words that people say or use. It's not about copying word for word from books or Trailhead or any other source. That's called transcribing, and that is something completely different. Note taking is an active process. It's the process of capturing information from different sources and then condensing it into coherent and meaningful resources that we can use for deeper understanding and reference later on. It sounds really fancy, but it isn't. To me, note taking is just the art of taking information from a source and then rewriting it in your own words for better understanding and to make it more useful for reference later on. A lot of the time, we think we're taking notes when we're not, we're just transcribing. Now, we might start off by transcribing, so we'd write down key points, phrases, facts, or what someone has said, but we need to move from transcribing to note taking. We need to give that information meaning to develop our own understanding of it. We can do this in a number of ways, from rewriting what has been said in our own words, by synthesizing and summarizing it, and by using it to question ourselves and to question what we think we know. We need to give that information meaning in order for us to remember it. That is the art of learning. Giving information emotion so that it's easier for us to remember it, to understand it, and to recall it. So, how do we do this? Well, there are a number of ways in which we can give information more meaning, and today we're going to focus on putting pen to paper through note taking. Yes, pen to paper, not digital. Now, I can hear the collective groans and sighs from everyone. I was like that too. I mean, personally, I love using Notion, Notes, and Google Docs for all my information capture and gathering, but typing on a keyboard doesn't have the same impact as physically writing something down. There is something about physically writing something with a pen and paper that helps our mind engage. There's probably some really scientific explanation for it that talks about biochemicals, evolution, and something else, but I'm not a scientist, and I just know that when I write something down, I have a much better chance of internalizing it. So, how do we take physical notes? Well, there are a couple of ground rules that really helped me. So, one, all notes are handwritten. If I'm just capturing information to reference later, such as an article to read later, a video to watch, or a trail to do, then I can do that digitally using Notion or bookmarks. But when it comes to actually studying it and learning from it, I must take physical notes, and I tend to use notepads or journals. Two, use your own words. It's really easy just to copy what we see. There are times when we need to do that, such as facts and figures, but when we really want to comprehend and understand something, we need to record it in our own words. This helps us make sense of our notes later on when we come back to them. So, how many times have you taken notes and then a couple of days later you come to look back at them and you've no idea what they are, what they mean? If you write them in your own words, that shouldn't happen. Three, be selective. Don't record everything. Just because you can take notes on something doesn't mean you should. If you're in a meeting or you're learning a new concept and you record every single thing, you're going to overload your brain. Also, you'll find that you're missing parts of the meeting. It's taking way too much time, and by the end of it, you'll feel like your hand's going to drop off. So don't do it. Be selective about what you take notes on. Only take notes on what you think is important or will be useful later. Number four, make it interesting. Note taking and reviewing notes is not the most entertaining thing in the world. That's why we need to make them more interesting and engaging. Now, the way I do this is through using colours. I can use colours to highlight key information as a bit of a legend. So, for example, I tend to record crucial information in red, as I know red is for important. I use green and blue for actions and insights, and I use black for standard information as it's just a formal colour and I tend to use a black pen. The important part here isn't how you use the colors or how you highlight it. It's that you use color to make your notes more attractive, more engaging, and easier to reference. And on that note, don't overdo it. You don't want to use that much color that your page looks like a 90s rave scene and it loses all meaning. Your colors and highlights should help you know what information is where and what information is important. 5. Structure your notes. Now, this is where it can depend massively on how you work. I'm going to walk you through how I structure my notes as I've found it really beneficial for me, but there are loads, and I mean loads of ways that you can do this. So, first of all, I like to break my page up, and I have 4 sections. They're not all equal and they can vary in size depending on what I'm taking notes on, but this is generally how I structure them. On the top left, I have a capture or general notes section. So, this is where I record key information such as facts, figures, and concepts, what is being said or written, or anything else. It's an area for information capture, a bit like how I mentioned transcribing earlier on. On the top right is where I record any questions, ideas, or notes in my own words. If I'm in a meeting, this area can sometimes be a little bit empty until I review the notes and add more meaning later on. But this is an area where you make your notes. So on the left, we capture the information, and on the right, we create our own version of that information. Then we have 2 more sections. The bottom left is for actions to take. So I use this when I need to carry out an action, assign an action to somebody else, research a concept or topic, or anything else that I might need to do after the session. I find it really useful to have these sections as it means I'm always asking what the next actions are, and this will help me move the project or my learning forward, and that is really important. Then we have the last section, analogies. I mentioned earlier on that we need to give information meaning in order for us to remember it. That is a key part of learning something new. If you think about it, every piece of information that you know has some form of meaning to it. It could be your telephone number, it could be your partner's birthday, your child's favorite food, or an upcoming event. Even stuff that you remember and think has no meaning actually has meaning. So, for example, useful facts or numbers. When you've read that piece of information, you probably found it funny, or you even asked yourself why you would ever need to know that. This is the meaning that you've given it. So, because you've given that information meaning, you've remembered it. This section is really, really useful and it's important because it allows you to take the information from above and apply it to something you know. So, for example, you may be learning about the Salesforce data model and learning all about objects, records, and fields. If you make the analogy that Salesforce is just a giant spreadsheet, objects are tabs, and rows are records, and columns are fields, then you can bring that information to life. And you'll remember that. So, when you're looking at an object, you're just looking at a table of data, that records are just rows of that data, and the columns are just the fields or the values of that record. By making that analogy, you've brought meaning to the information and you've made it easy to understand and remember. So, what does this actually look like in action? Let me run you through a quick example because I think it's a really vital skill and it's something that we're not taught earlier on in life. And we're going to take the example of Salesforce lead assignment rules. On the left, we're going to capture what we would read on Trailhead or Salesforce Help or through a course such as Get Force Certified. We want to capture the information that we're gathering, so we're going to use this left capture column. Here, we'd record that lead assignment rules are used to automatically assign leads to a queue or a user. We would learn that only one assignment rule can be active, but there can be multiple rule entries. And we'd also learn that the sort order dictates the order that the entries are evaluated in. Now, as we go through the lessons, there might be questions or insights that pop into our head, and we want to record these questions in the right hand column. So, this is our create column. Questions such as how are users notified when they've assigned a lead? Or when are the leads actually assigned? What triggers the lead assignment rule? You may even wonder if we can assign leads randomly or based on a round robin process. So, as you can see, we've been capturing information in the left column and then we've been creating questions and insights in the right column. As we go through the lessons, we may find the answers to our questions that we have. And in that case, we can just simply cross them out and record the information in the capture column. If we don't find that information and our questions are unanswered, we can then move them into an actions area. And this is the area that we use to record anything we need to do, such as researching round robin lead assignments or completing the lead assignment module on Trailhead. So now you can see how we're using these areas together and how we're actively taking and making notes that are going to be useful later on. It may feel like a bit of work to begin with, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be amazed at how quickly you can do this and how you can be laser focused on the information that means something. You'll no longer record every single word someone says, every fact or figure that's flashed on screen, or any other non important information. And then we have the final section. And this is where we pull it all together. This is where we add meaning to that information. So we want to think of something that we know that could be related to this concept. So for lead assignment rules, I'm going to use the example of my old career in travel. We all specialized in specific areas such as holidays to the US, Canada, Far East, Middle East, etc. And to make sure that we had the best chance of converting those leads, they needed to go to the right people. There's a much higher chance of someone who specializes in the Far East converting a Far East inquiry than someone who specializes in the US who doesn't really know much about the Far East. We could use lead assignment rules to ensure that inquiries go to the right person. You don't just have to write analogies. Sometimes it's easier to draw them, so you could make a sketch that's easy to understand. The point is, this is the area that you're going to bring that information to life that you can really understand and internalize it. Also, we do tend to remember pictures more, and we can record a lot of information in just one picture. That's why we have the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So there you have it. We have our notes. But we're not finished yet. We should distill them. We should pick out the most useful information and create something that we can easily reference later on. But that's a lesson for another day. So for now, make use of your new note taking skills throughout the rest of the course. Feel free to post them on social media and tag me in them. So now, let's move on to the next lesson.